For being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I got to be honest. I'm a little happy that I didn't think about who was the president for the whole weekend. It didn't even dawn on me that there was even a president. I was kind of like, wow, this is what kind of normal feels like. Then obviously today I allowed myself to then open up back to the news, and RNC chairwoman, Ronna McDaniels, came out and, in the probably most predictable way possible, then began calling Joe Biden a liar. He lied! And again, the whole, now you're having buyer's remorse because Joe Biden promised you $2,000 and he's only going to get you $1,400. And I'm going, I don't know that people are going to have buyer's remorse over that. Look, I think people are demanding that. Look, you're going to fight for the best amount you can get because we need to get money into the economy. We need to fight this virus. But I think most people kind of get it. In fact, the majority of the country is behind this idea of getting money out quickly to people who need it, of stimulating the economy and having a rescue plan to get us through these next couple of months. In fact, interestingly enough, the last Quinnipiac poll, the last Greenberg Quinlan poll came out with 77% of us say the government should pass a major stimulus plan. 92% of Democrats, 73% of independents, and 64% of Republicans. Huh. That sounds like a lot. That sounds like almost uniting behind the idea that we need to do something, and we need to do something big. So what did we get today? Well, we got the new moderate Republicans, 10 led by 10 Republicans, led by Susan Collins. And you knew this was going to happen, right? You knew Susan Collins and the Mitt Romneys and the centrist Republicans were going to go and be trotted out to push an alternative to the $1.9 trillion that Joe Biden has proposed. You knew that it was probably going to be Mitch McConnell-ish light. And this is exactly what you would expect from the moderates who now care about, fiscal responsibility and now care about, how much, we're saddling our children with debt. And never mind letting them eat today. Never mind keeping a roof over their head today. Never mind making sure that their schools are safe. No. If they live through this, then, we don't want to saddle them with this. Now, again, I find it interesting that, the plan that the 10 Republicans have come forth with doesn't include one red cent for state or local governments, has nothing at all, not a dime. And, this just reeks of Mitch McConnell. This is what McConnell had done all during the Trump years. Not a dime for the struggling cities, not a dime for the struggling states, because they look at it as those are Democratic problems. Those are the Democrats' problems because, our states are already don't have, social service programs and things that help our citizens because we really don't seem to care much about them. Our workers don't have pensions, so, screw those states. Let them be like us. Let's tear them down to our level. And the thing is their base is okay with that. Most of my Republican friends, and it's easy. You can talk to people and just by their responses know which side they fall on issues. And one of those issues is around pensions. I always of the mindset that if someone has a pension and a good one, I ask, how do we get that for everyone? How do we raise everyone up? How do we make sure that everyone has access or the ability to be able to have that kind of, be it good wages, be it health security, be it retirement security, be it whatever it is? How do we aspire to better, as opposed to the flip side of, You have that? Oh, no. I don't have that. So you can't. And we're going to take it from you. That's the interesting, and right there, that conservative. That's their mindset. It's that race to the bottom. It's the lowest common denominator kind of thinking that if I don't have it, you don't deserve it, so we're going to destroy it. And this came out in their plan. It is pretty simple. Now, if you look at the plan, it's basically just saying we're going to take whatever Biden wanted, and we're going to give him a portion of it. For instance, Biden wanted a $1,400 stimulus check, and as Ronna McDaniel, the RNC head said, see, he lied to you. He's only going to give you $1,400. Well, the Republicans are only offering $1,000. So you go, wait a second, hold on. So if he's lying about $1,400, where's that put you? Oh, that's right. Shh, don't say anything. Joe Biden wants to increase the extra unemployment payments of $400 a month, I guess, through September. Republicans have come back and said, no, 4's too much. We'll go 3, but only through June. On the money for vaccines, they both seem to be okay with that. We need to spend money to get people vaccinated. On child care during this pandemic, Joe Biden wants $25 billion. They're going to give $20. On opening schools, Joe Biden wants $130 billion to reopen schools, to do the cleaning, to do all the things that need to be done. Republicans, again, they're at 20. So again, no money for state and local governments, nothing to help them, which means states like Pennsylvania, big trouble over the summer if we don't get some kind of help for our local municipalities and all of that. Now, the weird thing is as someone who's not a big fan of West Virginia Governor Jim Justice, even when he was a Democrat, he came out today, was on CNN, and said, if we need to go big, we need to do something. And he said, even if we throw some money away right now, so what? He said, people really, really hurting. We got to move. He said, there's too much pain. There's too much pain. And my mind says, maybe somebody should tell those 10 senators. Someone should tell the Republicans, hey, you got, Trumpkin governor over here, Jim Justice, going, hey, we need to go big. We need to go big. We need to understand that, we need to be fiscally responsible. Yeah, but not now. We've got real problems. And the reality is I don't think our insulated 10, I don't think they really care. And that's a frustrating thing to me. Because we desperately need to beat this virus. And I look at what's going on in Chicago right now, in an interesting scenario. The Democratic mayor of Chicago saying to the teachers union, you send your teachers back into the classroom. And the teachers are going, we don't think it's safe. You don't have the resources to clean the classrooms. You don't have the resources to keep us safe. This isn't a good idea. We should stay in the remote setting until we get through this so that it doesn't explode and we don't get people sick. And the governor's going, or the mayor of Chicago is going, no, everything's fine. And I had a friend from Chicago send me, like this fact sheet that they're sending around about, what the reality is, because everyone's pointing at the private schools. The private schools have been open, I guess, since the fall. Some of the charter schools have been open since the fall, the well-funded ones. And you go through this list of, the public schools, they've got outdated HV systems with, that are generally too small for the rooms and were, outdated. You go to these new schools with the private schools, they've got, air filters and air scrubbers, and they've got everything that they need to fit that room. Class sizes considerably smaller. The number of times they clean the school, the private schools clean the school twice a day. They've got a massive shortage in the public schools of people to clean it. I was at the supermarket the other day, just kind of as an aside, and there are people who go, well, we're cleaning the carts. No, you weren't cleaning them. There was a kid walking by with a bottle of spray stuff and just spraying it in the air. And maybe it would trickle down, maybe it wouldn't. That's not cleaning. And again, I've seen this played through the place that I work. They would send a guy in with a Ghostbuster outfit on, and he's got the tank, and he's just spraying stuff all over the place. Going, that's not cleaning. That's just spraying something, and it's not even power spraying. I mean, it's just it's in the air. And they go through this thing that like in the public schools, they got class sizes of like 24. In the private schools, 9 or 10. You've got smaller classes, able to do social distancing. You've got the infrastructure to be able to make sure that that you can clean and keep people safe and all of that. And yet, nothing. They also point out that the public schools, the kids are supposed to bring their own masks. As where the private schools, they have daily disposable ones. I mean, so the stark difference in the scenario that you're walking into, I think is pretty important to point out. Now, especially when you're talking about high poverty areas, which a number of these Chicago schools are in, and which is why these teachers are going, no, we need to keep not just ourselves safe, but these kids and their families safe. And look, this is one of those moments where you see the power of teachers to be able to stand up and say no more. And this is one of those moments where in this country, I think we've lost that ability to stand up and say no more. The right wing, they feel empowered to tear things down. And I have some anti-masker folks that I know who are more than empowered to say, no, I'm not going to wear a mask, and I'm willing to infect whomever if I get sick. But I look at someone like the Chicago Teachers Union, who good on them for taking a stand and saying, no, we're not going to put our teachers in a dangerous classroom. No, we're not going to subject our kids to that kind of treatment. If you want to bring up your standards, do that. And then we can talk. And this is where, as working people, I think we've lost this idea of societal power. And this is where, I talk about this all the time myself, because I've never not had a union job. So I've never known that feeling of helplessness of not being able to speak up and say, nope, not doing it. All the years I drove a truck, if I came in, the brakes were out of adjustment, or if there was a light out, or if there was anything wrong with that truck, I'd say, I'm not taking it. Fix it. There was no, you got to take, no, fix it. I'm not moving it. I know people who've worked for non-union companies, trailers didn't have any brakes. Take it. No lights on the truck. Take it. I mean, and their choice is I take it or I lose my job. Well, these teachers are saying, no, we're gonna stand firm on this. And they were supposed to go back to school on Monday. They said no. And now I guess negotiations are off for another day. This, again, to me, is one of those shows of power, being united around the idea of we're not going to put ourselves in dangerous conditions. We're not going to put up with putting people in harm's way. And it leads me to, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing coming out of Alabama with this Amazon situation. Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama, I believe it is. There's a union down there trying to organize the Amazon workers. And the stories coming out of there, Amazon spending untold amounts of money to fend off this organizing drive. And, these people are talking about these captive audience meetings and how much money they're spending on harassing these people. And it got me, back to this mindset of, the reality is corporate America doesn't want people to have the power to be able to say no. And I was thinking about it today, going, if unions were bad for you, which is what corporate America keeps telling us, well, all you're going to do is put someone between you and me, and we're not going to be able to deal with each other directly, and my open door policy will close. If they spent the kind of money down at this Amazon place on busting up any organizing that's going on and keeping the union out, if they spent that kind of money on keeping their workers safe, there probably wouldn't be this organizing drive. I I mean, if they truly cared about their workforce, if they truly cared about these people, they would have spent money getting them PPE. They'd have spent them money getting them cleaning supplies instead of just get to work. We've got orders to put out. And, when I see, and it's interesting to me because you see all the money that they are spending on this union busting effort, and it's a lot. And you go, could that money have been spent much better to keep people safe, to maybe rethink some things to get us through this pandemic? Because at the end of this, the longer this takes, the worse it's going to get. And as someone explained to me the other day, the reason that we're so worried about these mutations is because the virus is it's rampant. And the more of it that you have, the more opportunities you have for it to mutate and to have these different variants that get much worse. It's kind of like when the doctor yelled at me one time for not finishing my antibiotics. I said, I feel okay. I forgot. I gave 100 reasons to Sunday why I didn't finish the prescription. He's like, you dumb this, that, and the other thing. You don't do this. He goes, this is how it comes back worse and worse. When I give you something, you got to finish it. And, he was very clear. And look, I've always been one of those people. I don't go to doctors. I hate taking medicines. I don't take anything. So, when I started feeling better. And he's like, no, stupid. This is how you kill it. You have to continue the course so that it's dead, so that it doesn't come back in a stronger, more resistant form. And he then explained the reason when you were a kid we had erythromycin that worked on everything is because, well, it worked on everything. Now we don't give it to anybody because it doesn't work on anything. Because now we're down to whatever Z-Pack or what, we've gone from one to this extreme because it has continued to mutate. And for me, there's just so much here that's frustrating. And it comes down to, we just don't seem to listen as people. Crazy, crazy times. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk with Bill Scher about, there's some stuff going on in Congress. So it might be interesting. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That day marked a pivotal moment in the continuing Flint sit-down strike. The nationwide strike against GM started in Flint, Michigan in late December. By late January, UAW organizers agreed that nearby Chevy engine plant number 4 had to be shut down. It was a massive facility. It employed 4,000 workers on 2 shifts. The plant superintendent had been firing union activists. Armed guards patrolled every inch of the facility to prevent a sit-down. Union organizers knew there were company spies in their ranks. They planned the takeover by staging distracting job actions at nearby Chevy plants number 9 and then number 6. This would draw the guards away from plant number 4. And so, on this day, just as the day's shift was ending, workers sat down at Chevy plant number 9. The company guards were ready to launch an attack. They began beating and gassing the sit-downers. The Women's Emergency Brigade smashed plant windows to dissipate the gas. The diversion worked. Guards left Chevy number 4 unattended. Workers then turned off all the machines and barricaded themselves in. The plant guards tried to re-enter and were met with pistons, connector rods, and fire hoses. The Women's Emergency Brigade gathered outside the plant and locked arms. UAW organizer Joe Sayan announced, quote, "We want the whole world to understand what we are fighting for. We are fighting for freedom and life and liberty. This is our great opportunity. What if we should be defeated? What if we should be killed? We have only one life. That's all we can lose, and we might as well die like heroes than like slaves." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Democrats in the House are moving towards, I guess, trying to oust this Marjorie Taylor Greene, censure her, have her thrown off of committees. Not quite sure just yet where they're going, but something's going to happen. Evidently, Steny Hoyer had a conversation with Kevin McCarthy. They're going to think of something. You got Debbie Wasserman Schultz now coming out and saying that she's going to introduce a resolution to strip her of her committee assignments, which I got to be honest, I really want this crazy woman on the education committee. I do. I want to see just how crazy she is. Because, hey, did you know the Jews have space lasers that start fires? Yeah, how about that? Space lasers. And I guess I'll go with Donald Trump's Space Force. And here to share some thoughts on space lasers. Do we need them? Did they start the fires? I've asked our good friend Bill Scher to come back and talk with us. Bill is a contributing editor over at Politico magazine, and I'm sure now going, what the hell have I gotten myself into? Bill, thanks for taking time for us.
Always a pleasure.
Space lasers, Bill! Space lasers!
I never got my Space Laser membership card. Sad to say, I feel slighted.
I got to be honest. I want her on the education committee because I want people going, this is the reason we need education. Exhibit A.
Well, there was a Republican quote in Politico today saying the Democrats don't want to kick her out of Congress. The Democrats want her there to show everybody how crazy Republicans are. It's in the Republicans' interest to get rid of her and say, look, we're not crazy town. I mean, there's a whole debate going on how Trumpy should the party be, but there's some daylight between hardcore Trumper and Jewish conspiracy space laser woman, So, but it does seem like Democrats are going to force a vote on whether she can be on committees or not in the House, and it's just something else that's going to divide the Republican Party. And to be very blunt, I think a divided Republican Party is not just good for Democrats. I think it's good for America. I think it's and I think perhaps healthy for the Republican Party in the long run. I don't think it is tenable for them to be a conspiracy theory party. Push will have to come to shove at some point, and they might be better off leaning into it and just having the fight.
No, I'm right there with you. I at some point, they've got to do something about their own. But, is this something during the middle of a pandemic the Democrats should be spending time on? I mean, I look at Gun Fetish Barbie, the one from Colorado. I'm perfectly happy with her there. She's making tons of money for people on the left who are raising funds off of just how crazy she is. She's not going to get anything done because she's the outlier of the party. At least I hope. So it'll be interesting to see how the Republicans handle both of them over the coming days.
Well, and I think a divided Republican Party is potentially good for America insofar as it may free up some Republicans to cooperate with Democrats, to make very clear, this is not where we want the party to go. We don't want this to be a conspiracy theory party, and I'm not going to be subject to pressure from Donald Trump and others to make me be in allegiance with them. I don't know how it's all going to pan out at the end of the day, but I think if there ever is to be hope of actual bipartisanship, it starts there with Republicans no longer being a unified party.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I just don't see it. And this is where, I sit back and I go, they have shown me at no point are they willing to let one of their own go. I mean, if this were a Democrat, they would have resigned 10 ways to Sunday by now. If this were Al Franken, he'd have been out the door by now. They'd have had his.
He
stuff
was out the door.
Packed. I know they'd have had his stuff already packed. They would have just had the threat of a vote. It'll be interesting to see if the Republicans actually pull the trigger. I don't think they're going to.
I'm not convinced they're going to. A majority of Republicans will vote to block her from committees. I bet somebody does. I mean, you have the 10 House Republicans that vote to impeach Trump.
Yeah.
Those 10 may vote to join Democrats in barring Green from committees. And if I understand correctly, I mean, I think they can do it on a majority vote.
Yeah, just a straight majority vote. But here's the thing: what if they don't, and you have the Democrats who are doing it just by themselves, and you turn the Republican Party even further to the extreme, to where any of those 10 then end up being, on the chopping block as someone crazier primaries them in a couple of years. And the Republican Party keeps going off the cliff. And I now look at this guy, Adam Kinzinger, I guess his name is, Republican from Illinois, who's now trying to take up the Trump mantle with this Country First PAC that he's starting.
Well, he's anti-Trump. He's one of the 10.
Oh,
he's one of the folks that voted to impeach.
That's right.
He's trying to flip the America First into Country First.
So do you see that taking it on any legs?
Well, I mean, I think it shows that there's not really that much of a moderate conservative split in the Republican Party.
Right.
I do think there is a rational Republican and irrational Republican split. And Kinzinger is on the rational Republican side. I think the faction of House Republicans in that camp is a lot smaller. And the bigger question is, how much of it do we see on the Senate side? Senate Republicans, by and large, voted to certify the Electoral College count, whereas a majority of House Republicans did not. And now we're going to see if there is real merit and weight between what these 10 Senate Republicans are doing on pandemic relief. If there is a real good faith attempt to find common ground with Biden, or is this performative and it won't go anywhere and Democrats will have no choice but to do it through reconciliation at the end of the day?
Yeah, I don't see the fact that they have no money whatsoever for states and local governments, to me, just is almost a non-starter, and they have to know that that's almost a non-starter.
Well, I think Biden came in with a high bid, and Collins came in with a low bid, and I mean, so the House plan, sorry, the Republican plan, if I'm correct, does not have the state and local. I don't believe it has the rental assistance. I don't believe it has extended paid leave. It does a $15 minimum wage, and it's not as expansive when it comes to targeted payments. So forgive me if I'm missing an element there.
That's about it.
But so there's a number of pieces that they don't have that Biden does have. Where there is commonality is that both sides agree that the economy remains in distress and more deficit spending is needed.
Right.
And now they're haggling over, size and scope. So I don't think it is implausible that the difference can be split. I'm not going to make predictions at this stage of the game by any stretch. But there was a debate over state and local in the last round of pandemic relief, and they ended up doing some backdoor things. They ended up doing some targeted state and local government stuff that wasn't as big as what Democrats wanted, but it was more than zero. So that's the kind of thing where there's some evidence that they can find the middle ground. So I don't know if that is going to be the biggest sticking point. Rental assistance might be a very big sticking point. Where they do the income level for the payments might be a sticking point. I can't know yet because this is so early. And the fact that, I shouldn't say the fact that if Democrats pass the budget resolution this week, early next week, and just for folks know, I'm getting into the parliamentarian weeds here, but to do budget reconciliation that prevents a filibuster, under the rules, you have to do a budget resolution first. The budget resolution has the reconciliation instructions to the committees, and then they write the piece of the reconciliation bill. So if Democrats have 50 votes for the resolution this week, the reconciliation process will move alongside the bipartisan talks that started today with Biden and the Collins group of 10. No one's talking about this right now. I'm not expecting it, but just in theory, if, say, Joe Manchin raises his hand and says, I want this bipartisan, I'm not going to vote for the budget resolution. I'm not going to let you go down the reconciliation path. That changes the whole equation. Right. My guess is that won't happen because reconciliation gives Democrats leverage in the bipartisan talks. They can say, hey, Susan Collins, if you don't meet us halfway or more than halfway, we have another route. So if you want to do this, if you really want to do this, if you want the credit for doing this, I mean, there's reason for Republicans to do this, because if they don't, Democrats get all the credit. If Republicans want some of the credit, they got to play ball. And so
Right.
we'll see how much they want the credit.
No, and it's a perfect way of laying it out, and it gets into the weeds and it gets complicated for people. But as you've pointed out, look, we can go a bipartisan route where there's going to be some give and take, or the Democrats, if they have the 50 votes and Joe Manchin is part of that, they can ram it through. I would prefer it not be rammed through. I would prefer that we save that budget reconciliation for when we need other stuff.
Well, that's part of the delicate dance here. I mean, on one hand, I'm a pretty Machiavellian guy. Get what you can get with the votes that you have.
Right.
So, in and of itself, it makes perfect logical sense to say if you can get more with 50, then go get more. Where it gets a little complicated. Well, first number one, I don't think we know Democrats have the 50. And if I'm Chuck Schumer, I'm not going to assume I have the 50 unless I've been told I have the 50. Joe Manchin has not said, I'm going to pass the reconciliation, whatever you put in front of me. Angus King said early on, this is a monopoly money. He's given a little bit of a red flag. He doesn't like the price tag where it stands. So maybe they'll come around. Maybe they don't want to be, the party poopers here. I'm not going to assume it at this juncture until they say it. Right. But let's say they do come on board for the 50. You can get more with their support. Does that mean Democrats get less beyond this point because they can't easily pass a second reconciliation bill, or they have soured the Susan Collins group? They say, you guys aren't trustworthy. I don't want to do this to you anymore. That means you can't do immigration reform as easily. Maybe you can't do climate as easily. Maybe you can't do infrastructure as easily. I don't know. I'm just saying there are several elements here that the negotiators are going to have to weigh before pulling the trigger on whichever route that they take.
Yeah. But at the end of it, the latest poll that I saw on it, which is, this Greenberg Quinlan, Rossner research poll, that says, over 3/4 of the country is in favor of moving on a stimulus. It is very popular. People want this. People need this. And I think you're right. I think the Republicans are going to want to come into it and say, hey, we did something, even if it means, we didn't help as many people, or, especially those Democratic cities, because that's, for me, what the McConnell part is. The reason they don't want to help state and local governments is because they know that Democratic cities and states are going to overwhelmingly do better in this than Republican cities. And I hate thinking that way, but that appears to be the way it is.
I mean, I think it's the way that some of them are thinking. I don't think that makes a ton of sense to me. I mean, there are blue cities in red states that will get helped by this. I don't see where Republicans should be mad if Birmingham, Alabama gets money, or Jackson, Mississippi gets money. They're gonna, it's not gonna just help blue people by doing that. But your point about the poll numbers is very important here. The Republican Party in general and the Group of 10, they don't have any messaging at all right now to say why the Biden plan is bad. They're not building up momentum to cut out key elements of it. So that weakens their position and potentially makes it easier to come to an eventual deal, because they're not weakening the ground that Biden is standing on. Now, the one thing that can weaken it is if Joe Manchin raises his hand and says, no way, no how am I doing 1.9 trillion. I mean, that has nothing to do with poll numbers. I mean, some people tell me, well, people in West Virginia don't want Manchin to do that. The governor of West Virginia doesn't want Joe Manchin to do that. That may all be true, but Joe Manchin might just do what he wants to do because he doesn't answer to anybody but himself. He's 73 years old. He may not even run again. He has no obligation to stay in the Democratic Party. He may simply say, I'm a deficit hawk guy. I don't want to do that. I can't know. I'm just not going to make assumptions about where people stand until they say it.
All right.
But I would argue beyond Joe Manchin saying, this is the one substantive argument I've heard made by anybody that is critical of the Biden plan. And that is that the $2,000 checks, $1,400 plus the $600, should not go to upper income families. That's the one substantive argument I've heard made by anybody.
And I think everybody agrees with that.
Well, I mean, some people think some people think that bigger is better. That even rich folks will get the money and they'll spend it, and maybe some people won't fall through the cracks because you're not being overly restrictive about it. So there's arguments on both sides, but I'm just saying that's one counter argument I've heard, and I think the only one beyond sort of general, you shouldn't spend too much money. But that's a hard argument to make because you're already spending a lot of money either way.
Right.
There's no balanced budget happening right now, no matter what you do.
Yeah, but I got to be honest. I don't think Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett need it. I think where they put the number right around 150,000 for a couple, 75 for individuals, I think is not a bad thing. But I also think maybe there's got to be something there where if you did struggle, if you did lose employment, there's got to be help to get you somewhere where you were so that you don't fall further behind. So I think there's got to be some kind of needs test in this, because I know a lot of people who have not been affected by this at all, who are just going, hey, I got an extra couple $100, I got an extra couple grand. That's going to help me get even further ahead, which I'm not opposed to. But in a moment where you've got real people who are about to be kicked to the curb, I think we can have that discussion.
Well, and I think the macroeconomic argument against that is if you're already of means and you get an extra couple grand, you just pocket it. You don't put it back in the economy, and it doesn't have the same stimulative effect. If you're living on the edge, every dollar you get is going into a rent payment, groceries, paying off debt, something. It's not just sitting at home collecting dust, sitting in a bank account, barely making interest. That's the kind of thing where I think there's an argument for the more targeted approach. And so I would not be shocked at all if Biden's going to come down, he's going to come down there to some degree.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And as you said, Joe Manchin's going to be the key part of all this. And at the beginning, on Inauguration Day, that was my thing. Sadly, we're at the behest of Joe Manchin. I don't have great hopes.
Well, I don't think Manchin is an obstructionist. I think Manchin wants a bill one way or the other, and clearly, just going by Manchin's own words, he would prefer greatly that bill was bipartisan. Yeah. He thinks bipartisanship is a value in and of itself. A lot of people don't.
No, I don't. I think just getting something done. I just think we got to get stuff done, and for me, it's that simple. But Bill, I appreciate the time, man. It's always fun talking with you. Appreciate it, man.
You too. Take care.
Good stuff, our friend Bill Scher. Make sure you check out his work over at BillScher.com or BillScherMedia.com. We'll get links out on how you can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1960. That was the day that 4 black freshman students from the Agricultural and Technical College of North Carolina sat down to make a stand for justice. Ezell Blair Jr., Franklin McCain, Joseph McNeil, and David Richmond visited a whites-only lunch counter at the Woolworth store in Greensboro, North Carolina. They were determined to challenge the racial discrimination of the Jim Crow South. They had planned their actions ahead of time, arranging for media coverage. The A&T 4 took their seats at the counter, ordering coffee and a slice of cherry pie. Soon, police arrived to eject the 4 black patrons. They refused to give up their seats. They stayed until the counter closed, returning the next day with more supporters. The sit-in had been a successful strategy of the U.S. labor movement in the 1930s. It was a powerful tactic to build solidarity, garner public attention, and bring about change. Members of the Congress of Racial Equality had also used the sit-in during their organizing for civil rights in the 1940s. The Greensboro action sparked an unprecedented wave of sit-ins for civil rights. Mass mobilizations for sit-ins swept the South. That year, thousands of black students participated in sit-ins or marched in support of the actions. These black students faced insults, violence, and 1,500 were arrested. Their actions brought national attention to Southern segregation and helped to set in motion the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In 2010, the AFL-CIO held a 50th anniversary commemoration with the 3 living participants of the Greensboro sit-in. AFL-CIO Executive Vice President Arlene Holt Baker told the men, "We thank you for the vision, the faith, for being crazy enough to believe you could change America and make it better for us."
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you may remember the story we talked about. It's been a couple of months, but this Tom Moore guy, the 100-year-old World War II vet from the UK, who raised something like $45 million for frontline workers. Evidently on Sunday, he was admitted to the hospital with coronavirus. And it's just, it's again, another one of these horrible moments. But good on him and I wish him the best, and I know everyone else does. But for me, the sooner we can get through all this, the sooner we start doing what we need to get done, the better. Also, some other good news. The Biden administration has put some funding forth for these new rapid at-home tests, which I guess you can get the results at home within 15 minutes. I guess they're going to be something like $30 a test for I guess back in December they were like $30. They're now going to be, I guess, cheaper, and we're going to get them out. And this is how we whip this. This is how we start moving in the right direction, get the vaccine, tons of testing, stuff that should have been done months ago. And I'll tell you, we've struggled with this way too long. This has been way too long in the doing. And sadly, it's the people on the front lines who have been hit the hardest. And I'll tell you, I don't know how airline flight attendants deal with it. I don't know how bus drivers and train operators and our public transit folks deal with it at all, because I know I wouldn't. I'm here to share some thoughts on, well, what needs to get done and what Congress needs to do to help our transit industry. I've asked Greg Regan to come talk with us. Greg is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Greg, thanks for taking time for us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So, I talk about this all the time. I don't know how bus drivers deal with people who are just defiantly not willing to wear masks. I don't know how flight attendants do it. I don't know how people put up with it. I literally would be strangling. I'd be in jail by now if I had to deal with these people on a daily basis. It's just one of those things that's amazing to me.
Yeah, they've been truly on the front lines dealing with the worst, not only of the pandemic, but of sometimes it's turned into the worst of human reaction in many of these situations. I know everybody is stressed. I know there's a lot of pressures, both economically and socially on our country, but we need to make sure these people are protected. We also need to make sure they have their jobs, because they're helping us see through this right now.
Absolutely. And the thing I remind people of, especially on the public transit side of things, those frontline heroes, those people that we were putting up on a pedestal, those essential workers that we were praising back during the heat of the pandemic, when things were closed down, who we've now kind of forgotten about and clawed back anything we were giving them. If it weren't for public transit, a lot of those people don't get to work. A lot of those people don't get to the hospitals, to the grocery stores. And they were the people who I think suffered a great bit of loss. And now we're talking about gutting their funding, slashing their jobs, and kicking people to the curb.
Yeah, it's really a shame. I think, we've exposed a lot of things here during the pandemic in terms of failures of our own society. But I think the lack of investment, lack of recognition in terms of what our frontline transportation workers bring to our country is one of those things. And if you look at transit in particular, I mean, in major cities, DC, where I live, or New York City, they are the ones, to your point, helping get our healthcare workers to the hospital, helping make sure that people are able to get drugs they need, get food. And, they're not going to be able to continue to do this without the right sort of federal support and state and local support as well. And it starts with Congress, and it starts with the administration, both in terms of mask mandates and health and safety regulations, but also in terms of economic support. We need to make sure that we are providing a backlog here, a real funding upfront to make sure these systems are staying functional throughout the end of this. And without that type of support, ridership is down necessarily. People are doing their jobs by staying home in many regards. But the systems themselves are integral to our successful reemergence from the economy and our successful ability to see our way through this difficult time right now. So the federal government needs to show the leadership. We're hopeful that we can get another bill done here real soon that will address the needs in transit and Amtrak and aviation. And that we're going to find a way to make sure that when we emerge from this through the vaccines and through the end of this, that we are going to be a healthier have a healthier transportation system and have a way that we can see our way through this.
No, you're right, but it's not just New York and Washington and the big cities that need public transit. I mean, I know people in small communities like where I live, who go into Harrisburg, who need public transit to get to those jobs at the hospitals and at the grocery stores, who have seen the services cut back and seen their ability to get to and from work become much more difficult, and obviously their lives becoming much more difficult, which is why we need to absolutely do something. But here's what's really frustrating to me. I see, today you've got these 10 Republican senators who go to Joe Biden with their plan and not a dime for state and local governments, which in my view, I guess, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but that means not a dime for those transit systems, unless there's some part that, the subsection B of quotation A or whatever. I don't see any money in there to help transit systems.
No, there's no money in there to help transportation broadly, not transit, not state and local government. It is, in many ways, they're saying, okay, here is one problem. We're going to try to solve this one problem. We're going to say, okay, we'll give more money for vaccinations or something along those lines. They're ignoring the underlying issues that are actually going to help us really successfully get out of this stuff, which is investing in our state and local governments, which is all the services that are people are being provided, whether it be social services or others. It means making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to make sure we can emerge from this successfully. And to your point also earlier about smaller transit systems, you're 100% correct. I mean, these are in many cases areas where they've already been starved of funds. They've already had severe reductions in service, and they are the people who are being hurt by these reductions in services, and people are being hurt by a lack of opportunity in their transit systems, are the most vulnerable people. They're the people who need it the most. And that is not a situation that we as a country should be proud of.
No, I'm right there with you. But one of the things that I was saying from the beginning, right out of the gate, and our friend Sarah Nelson, president of the Flight Attendants Union, she was integral in getting this with the first bill, this payroll support program that kept, airline workers, receiving their paychecks on the payroll, no layoffs through, I guess it was through October is what it was. A very visionary idea, of which I wish they would have expanded to all workers. And we had the summer to come up with it, and we failed at every avenue for that. Is there a way to get some of this into this? Is there language being discussed in the Biden plan that you know of? And how do we make sure that we get that pushed through for not just airline workers, but all workers?
Well, we have pushed to make sure that there is, in this next plan, that there will be an extension of that PSP program, just continuing that through and hopefully get us through the end of the summer so that by that time we'll see bookings back up. We'll see a return of the industry, people that are going to be able to travel in a way that that they would have before the pandemic. We're pushing for that same type of job protection language for Amtrak to make sure that they can continue their service and bring their workers back and pay them what they were making before. We also have worker protections on the transit side too, to make sure that the money that's being put into the system is done in a way that promotes service and employment in these systems, because ultimately those are the people who are going to be hurt the most by any funding shortfalls and by the drop in ridership are the workers. And we cannot be in a situation where all of a sudden people are vaccinated and there's no transportation infrastructure left for them to use. That's just unacceptable. And what we did in the CARES Act, I was proud to work arm in arm with Sarah on this one, was we made it not about a corporate bailout. We focused the money on the people that are being directly hit. It is about keeping people attached to their payroll, to their benefits. Their certifications are up to date, because especially in the airline industry, if you leave the industry for a month, it is very difficult to go back. You have to go through all the certifications again. So this is it was a vital program. It's one that we're proud that we've been able to continue through both the bill that was passed in December after CARES Act, gave it a little bit more money there. We're hopeful we can get it done in this next bill too. And again, not just make it about airlines, but Amtrak and transit as well. And I think there's a roadmap to seeing us through the end here in a way that avoids some of the catastrophic, both corporate restructurings or massive layoffs, or all the things we've seen in past versions of these, whether it be a financial crisis or after 9/11, where really all of the losses are taken out of the worker's hide. In this case, through no fault of their own, these people's livelihoods were put at risk. And we have an opportunity to do this the right way, which is make sure that if the government is going to be bailing people out, it's bailing people out and not bailing out corporations.
No, it's what I was saying all during 2008 and 2009. To be honest, we shouldn't give a dime to corporate America. They're the ones who screwed this stuff up. We give it to the workers that are affected by it so their livelihoods don't change. And if corporate America can get the money out of them and they can survive, good on them. So look, I love the fact that Sarah championed this and you guys champion this, but you're not Magellan discovering new lands. This is stuff we should have been doing years ago. And look, and I say this about our unemployment system on a much bigger scale. I think what I think as a society we've figured out is unemployment doesn't come anywhere near to replacing the lost wages when you lose a job, which is why, even the Republican plan that they took today to Joe Biden has an additional $300 on top of state unemployment, which tells me something and should tell all of us something, that we need to strengthen unemployment for everybody for the next crisis, because there will be another one. But also this idea of creating a program where if this ever happens again, we have a mechanism in place to do exactly what you guys did. Keep people attached to their jobs, maybe working, part hours or whatever, but having a program between the companies and an unemployment system that keeps people getting their paychecks, keeps them getting health care, since we seem to be married to employer-sponsored health care, and keep us on a stable path instead of having a hope of a V bounce instead of the K that we're getting.
What you just also hit the nail on the head when it comes to unemployment. I mean, obviously, unemployment insurance is really inadequate in our country, and also it ignores the fact that we're missing out on all of the benefits that we have attached to employment. To your point, healthcare, retirement benefits, a lot of things like that. But the alternative to not getting this done, whether it be PSP or aid to Amtrak or aid to transit, is unemployment. And if people think we're saving money by not investing in these programs, we're wrong, because the people are still going to end up, in a worse situation that are still going to be relying on some form of public service, whether it be unemployment insurance or otherwise. So this isn't, I think people sort of look at a price tag and decide that that's too much in an arbitrary fashion without looking at what we're paying for. And we're paying for, frankly, the health of our country and the ability of our country to emerge from this stronger. And it's depressing when we start, nickel and diming on something like this when it's such a vital time.
Yeah, we didn't see that during the TARP era, did we? We didn't see when George Bush was telling us the economy's collapsing and Wall Street's going to take a major dump. There was no oh well, hey, maybe we could just give them a little bit. There was, hey, whatever you want. Here's a blank check, go. But you keep a single mother in their home and keep food on the table for some. That's a bridge too far.
Of course, yeah, no. Look, the corporations are people too, I guess was the phrase back then. But no, you're right. When it comes to tax breaks, when it comes to the previous versions of government bailouts that go directly to corporations without any strings attached, the price tags, people weren't, or legislators or leaders weren't thinking about what's too much. They decided it was too big to fail. But individuals apparently are expendable in this, and that is a real crime.
Yeah. At the end of this for me, and this is where I kind of want to wrap this up, in this world of, if it weren't for our labor unions, if it weren't for Sarah and her organization, and it weren't for the communication workers, if it weren't for your organization, the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL, the machine workers, the transport workers, those folks, even Unite here and a number of my Teamsters union, if it weren't for them, I think we would be in a much worse place, because they brought massive attention to how bad things were in the workplace. So for me, I think the message coming out of this should be, we want our government doing stuff, but we also got to do stuff for ourselves. And I'm hoping that there's going to be a massive spike in organizing happening, especially as we continue to tell the stories of what unions did during this to keep their members safe.
I completely agree. I think there are a lot of people looking around right now in this country and seeing where the efforts of unions and where the AFL and where TTD and others have pushed, and how we've managed to help keep people as whole as we can during this through real advocacy and real efforts on the ground here. And hopefully what that does is start making sure people aren't, one of the things that always bothers me is whenever you see this in a lot of areas where maybe there's a pending strike or something like that, you end up with a tidbit in a story that says a rail worker got paid X amount of money, $150,000 a year or something like that. And then you end up, the implication of that story is that person is making too much for that job. And we need to take that person down. The mindset here needs to be, instead of saying we need to take that person down, is why don't we lift everybody else up? And how do we get to a point where I'm not looking at that number and saying they're not worth it, but talking about what I should be worth and what the value of my job is? And that's the role that unions can bring to all of this, and the ability to raise all of us up and make sure that people are getting paid for the value of their work and for their worth as citizens of this country. And it's been a while. We've obviously been on a downswing in terms of the union density, but I really do think there is a brighter future for the labor movement, and consequently for the people of this country, to make sure that we are stronger and more powerful and getting into more industries in the future here. So I'm excited about it.
No, I am too, and I think I think this pandemic has opened a lot of eyes. At least I hope it has, and I'm hoping Joe Biden does move forward on making it easier for workers to join and form unions, if for no other reason than to protect themselves during times like this. And again, I think it shows. And I've had stories of unions who've come on here and said, look, right at the beginning we were negotiating for work changes, bigger lunchrooms, staggered start times, redesigning workspaces, because we got to keep our members safe. And for me, that's what being a union member is about.
Absolutely. No, it's there are. I think that it's obvious that the strength that unions have brought here have been to really protect their members, and that is the type of thing we want to bring to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But Greg, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the work you do. What should folks do tomorrow morning to help move this forward?
Call your senators, call your members of Congress.
There
that
you
is
go.
Always helpful to hear from people.
Call them early, call them often. Greg, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Good stuff, Greg Regan, Secretary-Treasurer of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. You can check out their website, ttd.org. ttd.org is their website. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913, marking the first day of the Patterson, New Jersey silk weavers' strike. During the strike, more than 20,000 silk weavers walked off the job. The strike started at the Doherty Silk Mill, where after years of declining wages, poor working conditions, and long work days, workers had endured the final straw, as management doubled the number of weaving looms handled by each worker from 2 to 4. The silk weavers decided to strike in protest. Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, an organizer from the International Workers of the World, came to Patterson to help with the strike. Soon, ribbon makers, silk dryers, and other weavers joined the effort for improved working conditions. Demands quickly expanded to include the 8-hour day. Immigrant workers from 9 different countries participated in the action, which shut down nearly 300 silk mills in the city of Patterson. The strike lasted more than 5 months. More than 1,800 workers were arrested. Eventually, the strike was broken by management, with the workers gaining few concessions. During the strike, workers were forbidden from meeting in the city of Patterson by city officials. So the mayor of nearby Haledon invited the workers to meet in his town instead. Pietro Botto, an Italian weaver, had sympathy for the strikers, many of whom were Italian. He and his wife Maria offered his home as a meeting place. Huge crowds came to hear speakers such as Upton Sinclair and Elizabeth Gurley Flynn give speeches from the second-floor balcony of the Botto home. Today, the Victorian-style Botto home is the site of the American Labor Museum. You can visit the museum to learn more about the Patterson Silk Strike and about other important events in American labor history by visiting their website, www.labormuseum.net. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
The Democratic Party establishment has a message for us progressives. Go away! That club of don't rock the corporate boat congressional leaders and their hired political operatives keep trying to purge progressive activists and policies from the party. Even when the candidates of these old-line forces win, as Joe Biden did, they can't seem to stop assailing grassroots progressives who supply the new ideas, energy, organizing, and votes that are the party's future. They're furious that we upstarts are making gains and pushing Democrats to be, well, Democrats. Just hours after polls closed on November 3rd, a group of timorous congressional Democrats joined in a game of pin the tail on progressives. They wailed that our demands for such egalitarian policies as Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, and criminal justice reform, quote, scares voters, and caused 8 centrist Democrats in swing districts to lose their House seats. One of the leading complainers, Representative Jim Clyburn, even insisted that those pushing a People's Democratic agenda would be the death of the Democratic Party. If, quote, we are going to run on Medicare for All, socialized medicine, we're not going to win, he proclaimed. Never mind that we taxpayers already provide socialized medicine for him and his colleagues, and never mind that he happens to be a top recipient of political cash from pharmaceutical profiteers, he is also wrong. Every single swing seat House Democrat who endorsed Medicare for All won re-election, tweeted Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on November 7th. Every single one. Indeed, of the 8 soft Dems who lost their House seats, all refused to back health care for all. This is Jim Hightower saying polling shows that 72% of voters favor changing to a government-run health care plan. There's the party's future.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, I'm looking at this this gang of 10, and the proposal to not have any money go to the state and local governments is just insane to me. And immediately my mind goes to, all of those programs that are being, probably overused right now because people absolutely need it, like rent assistance and heating assistance and, all of those programs that, just don't seem to ever have enough resource. And now you're saying to these states who are already handcuffed by lower tax revenues, well, you're gonna have to figure out how to do all the other stuff on whatever you got. It's crazy to me, but again, not surprising on a certain level, because we've got a political party who's made their name on sticking it to the poor. And I hate to put it that bluntly, but that just seems to be how it is. And it's frustrating and angering. And I know this is part of negotiations, and I get that. But when you start off by saying we're going to give you nothing, kind of makes you mad. And here to share some thoughts on, well, the Gang of Tens idea today, and maybe what Biden does, and how do we combat poverty in our country. I've asked Joe Sandberg to come talk with us. Joe is the founder of Business for Medicare for All. He's also the co-founder of Aspiration Bank and financial services. They do great work. Joe, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, glad to be back with you, Rick. How are you?
I'm good, but I'm looking at this. Thank you, Maine. Thank you for giving us Susan Collins back.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I'm looking at this, and I get it's a negotiation, and I know Republicans are really good at it, because they start off with we're gonna let you starve to death. We'll let you just starve to death instead of immediately starve to death. And it just seems, again, this is how this game is going to play out. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, I think that we're repeating the mistakes of 2009 when President Obama was so desirous of some kind of bipartisanship. And what I don't understand is how we haven't learned the mistakes of the past. Let's also level set. There's no moral virtue to bipartisanship. I don't know where people got this idea that something that's bipartisan is inherently good. What's also dangerous here is a potential repetition of what President George H.W. Bush did in 1990 and 89 after his 88 campaign, and he promised not to raise taxes. Well, President Biden make a clear promise to the voters of Georgia that if they sent 2 Democrats to the Senate, that the Senate would send $2,000 to every American. And already we've backtracked on that to this, 1,400 plus 600 equals 2,000. If you're explaining like that, you're on
losing.
the defense already. You're losing already. Yeah.
No,
right.
I mean that's the reality, and I've said where I think you could make that difference is you could say we're going to lower the amount that from maybe 150,000 down to 100 for couples or whatever. You could do something there, but you still got to give the working people of this country who are suffering mightily. You got to give them that help.
That's right, and it goes also to your point about negotiation, and this is yet another lesson that we should remember when it comes to Medicare for all, or whether it's the minimum wage. Is you can't negotiate from a place of compromise. You have to negotiate from a place of strength. This is why those who contend we shouldn't be fighting for Medicare for all, or we should be fighting for a $15 minimum wage instead of a $25 minimum wage. It's the repetition of decades of mistakes where we negotiate from compromise instead of from strength. And we're seeing here firsthand. The lesson here is that we should have been running on $3,000 checks, and then we would have had to compromise around $2,000 checks.
Or we should have been, talking about, some kind of basic income for the next couple of months, to where it was $2,000 a month for, through this period. But the sad thing is you and I, we can have these conversations and throw out these ideas. We don't have to deal with Joe Manchin.
Yeah, I hear you. But, Joe Manchin still has to deal with the rest of the United States Senate, including the progressives in the Senate that need to go along with the things that he wants for West Virginia. And then I'm sure you saw, and our viewers and listeners saw what Governor Justice said today in West Virginia, which is, this so-called per se responsible thing isn't necessarily fiscal austerity. It's to get people the money they need. So I think it testifies that Senator Manchin has his own problem with his governor. Justice is potentially going to run against Manchin. And, Manchin's going to be vulnerable to, I think, proper criticism that he didn't do what was necessary for West Virginians.
Yeah.
I don't know where this left-right divide suddenly became about how much you starve people. Whether you starve people during a pandemic shouldn't be a question of conservatism or progressivism, and the moderate position shouldn't be we're going to sort of starve people. And that's basically what Manchin is doing.
Yeah, I mean, especially from one of the poorest states in the country, you would think that, being in, if, and again, I don't know what's in between his ears. I'm not going to jump into his brain. I can only say what I would think I would do. And that is, I know I've got one of the poorest states in the country. I know I need massive infrastructure plans. I know I need to reinvent new industries because coal is not coming back, no matter how much we wish and pray it does.
Right.
We need something for our people. So I take my leverage and I go, yeah, we want these big things, but I want a bigger share than everyone else coming my way because I've got more leverage than everyone else.
Also, Rick, the thing is, once again, we Democrats are overcomplicating politics. I believe in the recent elections, I think, affirm that most voters have straightforward wants and desires, and that is they want to work for a living wage, and they want things that they have to buy to be affordable. So you look at Florida as an example. We put $15 minimum wage on the ballot in Florida. It passed with 60% of the vote in November, right? Well, Biden lost. Georgia, we basically ran 2 Senate campaigns on we're going to get you $2,000 checks, and we won 2 Senate races in, a light red state. It turns out that what people most care about is, are you going to help them earn more for their work? Are you going to help them have money so they can put 3 meals on the table for their kids? And if you give them a credible path to that, they're going to vote for you. And if you retrade them on those commitments, they're going to vote you out. So I'm very concerned that in the next 30 to 60 days, the die is going to be cast for a Republican wave in 22 if President Biden does not deliver on the promises to get people $2,000 cash. I think the stakes in the next 60 days are as high politically as they are existentially for people who are counting on this money.
No, I'm right there with you. As much as I wasn't a Bill Clinton fan, and I'm not a James Carville fan, they were right. It's the economy, stupid. It comes back down to the kitchen table stuff. Are you going to put a chicken in every pot? Are you going to make sure that people can keep a roof over their heads? And
That's right.
And for me, the fact that you've got, the RNC chair, this Rona McDaniel's coming out and saying, see, Joe Biden lied to you. Joe Biden lied. He's not getting you $2,000 like he promised you. He's only going to get you $1,400. Now, never mind the fact that our gang of 10 went and said, we're only going to get you $1,000, but Joe Biden lied to you.
Right. That's right. And then, of course, there's the insanity of what a small number of people that gang of 10 represents. And I mean, we can do a whole show on the undemocratic nature of the United States Senate and how a small number of American voters are holding the rest of us hostage. That's factually what happens when we delegate the decisions of the Senate to these 10 so-called moderates that happen to represent pretty small populations.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I come back to Joe Manchin. And look, not just Manchin, but also Tester in Montana. And you got the two from Arizona that are, holding the Democratic Party up.
But I think the irony is that Governor Justice will carry some credit for Manchin potentially doing the right thing, because I think that Manchin's probably going to sleep tonight recognizing that Justice is running to his left on these stimulus checks.
Yeah, it's kind of funny if you think about it, considering Justice was a Democrat, turned to a Republican, big Trump supporter. It'd be interesting to see if Justice turns back.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened.
But Rick, I just want to say, next up, we got to get ourselves ready for this minimum wage fight. And I see a lot of precursors here to that. I worry greatly that they're going to go weak in the knees on the demand for a $15 minimum wage. And, you and I have talked about $15 is the bare minimum. If the minimum wage had risen at the rate of productivity since 1960, it would be $23 today. So already by going for just 15, we're settling. But I'm desperately concerned that they're going to go something less than 15. And, the spirit of bipartisanship baloney is going to leave us with maybe an 11 or a 12. 15 isn't good enough as it is.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you. I'm a little more hopeful than I think most Democrats are. And
on the minimum wage?
On every issue. Because,
really?
I'm looking at Joe Biden, and while I've got my problems with the 1,400, I get the justification. Hey, when I said 2,000 back then. You got 600. We're going to get 1,400 more. I kind of get that. I don't like it because you are explaining. But the fact that he came out with a $1.9 trillion plan tells me that he's at least thinking bigger. Obama didn't do that. And framing Biden as a third Obama term, I don't think is accurate. I'm hoping
Well, I think that's a fair point, and I think we need to give him a little bit of time to see how it shakes out.
Exactly.
Since you and I last spoke, there's been some great appointments. In particular, the selection of Ron Klain as chief of staff is something that's given me a ton of optimism about the Biden presidency. I've known Ron a long time. This is a serious guy who thinks critically about the policies, especially in economics and pandemic relief, that we need. So I think you're right to strike a note of some optimism.
No, and I'll tell you, Joe Biden, in my lifetime, I'm a labor guy. I make no bones about that. I vote for I vote for candidates based on their labor record. How are they going to help me support my family? How are they going to help me and the unions fight for better wages, hours, and conditions? And Joe Biden did on day one by 5 o'clock more than any Democratic president in my lifetime has done for labor, and that's fired the chief counsel of the NLRB, sending what I think is an incredible message that the guy who was behind firing the Patco workers during the Reagan era got himself canned and sent to the curb in the most at-will employment fashion. To me, that is a massive message and gives me great hope that he's not going to take any you-know-what, and we are going to have a guy who's going to push us forward.
And don't forget $15 minimum wage for federal contractors signed in by executive order.
No, I mean, all those things give me hope. Now, while I've got problems with some of the stuff he's going to do and has done, at the end of it, is he going to move us forward? I think so. I'm hopeful. My fear is that we've got a couple of centrist Democrats that hold us back from truly visionary transformative change, and because I think that's what we agree on. I think we need that as a country,
including one of the senators that my home state of California keeps sending to Washington D.C., Dianne Feinstein. Should have retired a long time ago. I worry that she's going to be a bottleneck for some of the economic relief that people need.
Yeah. Can you do something about that? Can you get,
Well,
get,
that's
get
for
her
another
out?
episode. That's
No,
a conversation for another episode.
Yeah, no kidding. But look, at the end of it, it's going to come down to you and I and our listeners, going and calling these people and demanding. I mean, I think the way forward in this is not losing that voice, not losing that willingness to take to the streets, and then that willingness to to stir things up and to cause, as John Lewis said, cause good trouble.
We get the policies we organize for, not just vote for. And if Biden pleasantly surprises us, it's going to be in large part a credit to the people who have kept up the pressure by their continuous organizing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's what it comes back to. I am, Harvey K, who we've had on the program a number of times over the years, our good friend Harvey isn't as bullish on Biden as I am. But the fact that he's making outward tones towards FDR, and the idea that he maybe FDR's whispering in his ear gives me some hope.
I agree with you. I'm a big fan of Harvey.
Yeah. Now, going back to the minimum wage thing, there are some, and I think this is an education process. There are some who still spew the right-wing talking points, which is, we can't afford it during a pandemic. It's going to cost us jobs. It's going to put small businesses out of business. Oh, it's just a bunch of pimply-faced teenagers. You've heard all of the anti-arguments. What's the best argument for, do you think?
Well, I think the best argument is that when workers have more money in their pockets, businesses have more customers who can buy their products, and therefore they need to hire more workers, and that increases wages. It's a virtuous cycle. When workers have more money, everyone does better. And whether it's from the standpoint of the minimum wage worker or the entrepreneur or the local shop, we need to make policy that advances the common good. And the evidence is clear that when you have a consumer economy and consumers have more money, everyone in that economy does better. And the diagnosis of why we've had subpar economic growth for the last 30 years isn't complicated. We have a consumer economy in which the people who need to buy things have no money. And the people who have all of the money have run out of things that they actually need to buy.
Yep. And
so the best solution is to put more money in the pockets of people who need to buy things, and that's what a minimum wage that is a living wage actually does. I think icing on that cake is looking to our own history. Conservatives love to look back to history, and I'm sure you've noticed, Rick, conservatives love to look at the literal language that people use. Well, let's look at the literal language that FDR used when he signed the minimum wage into law in 1938. He literally said that businesses that rely on paying subsistent wages don't have a right to exist in the United States. And the minimum wage was absolutely intended to be a living wage, not like one of these gateway starter wages like some people on the right like to claim it is. So whether it's from the point of view of history or the point of view of pragmatism, the right policy is the living wage. A minimum wage is the living wage.
Yeah, you know what I get frustrated with is I hear people come out with this revisionist kind of history. When I was a kid, Joe, I had a minimum wage job, and it taught me the hard work and grit, and it taught me all these wonderful values of showing up on time and all of this stuff. And at the end of the week, I got a paycheck, and that made me want to go on. And now I'm a captain of industry, and we need that. And I go, that's all fine, well and good, but when you were a pimply-faced teenager, you were working for weekend money to go to the movies or take Sally to the dance. There are people who are trying to support their families and live on these jobs because the private sector hasn't created enough jobs for people. So to say that to revise what it was in your world is a completely different reality for the woman I spoke to last week who's 58 years old trying to support a family on $10 an hour.
Yeah, and to conservative folks who might be listening, think about the minimum wage from this point of view. When you let companies pay a crap minimum wage, what you're setting up is a dynamic where all of us as taxpayers then have to fill in the gaps for the services, food, rental relief that minimum wage worker needs to support her or his family. So a subsistent minimum wage is ultimately corporate welfare that takes our taxpayer money and subsidizes big businesses that could afford to pay a higher minimum wage.
Well, since you make that argument, the other side of that I get from people is, well, we don't need to raise the minimum wage, Joe, because we do have all of these supports that actually they're getting the $15 an hour. They're just getting it in other ways, and we need this low wage for small businesses. How do you answer that question?
My answer is nearly 8 out of 10 people live paycheck to paycheck in the United States. And this American dream that there's a middle class, that most people are in it, and that when you're in it, you live with financial security is an illusion. And so that counter argument that we don't need a higher minimum wage because people are doing just fine doesn't stand up to the facts.
No, I'm right there with you. Last question I've got for you. Obviously, this is going to be a long, drawn-out fight. I hope that I hope Joe Biden and the Democrats move. I'm hoping there's bipartisan support for a good, chunky stimulus to help us through this pandemic. A good, chunky rescue plan. What can we do? Do you think to get moving and get this move forward?
Well, it's as simple as you got to call your member of Congress and your senator and keep up the pressure. That's the answer. It
is that simple. You should have it on speed dial. I've got it on my phone on speed dial.
Agreed.
That's good stuff. Joe, I appreciate the time. As always, good talking with you, man.
Thanks, Rick. Talk to you soon. Be well.
All right, our good friend Joe Sandberg. Look, I mean, it seems very simple to me. Very simple. Raise the minimum wage. It's about dignity and respect on the job. And it is about the economy. I mean, as he pointed out, those people spend the money. You get economic activity. Things grow. Seems logical and simple, and well, maybe too simple. I'm gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That day marked a pivotal moment in the continuing Flint sit-down strike. The nationwide strike against GM started in Flint, Michigan in late December. By late January, UAW organizers agreed that nearby Chevy engine plant number 4 had to be shut down. It was a massive facility. It employed 4,000 workers on 2 shifts. The plant superintendent had been firing union activists. Armed guards patrolled every inch of the facility to prevent a sit-down. Union organizers knew there were company spies in their ranks. They planned the takeover by staging distracting job actions at nearby Chevy plants number 9 and then number 6. This would draw the guards away from plant number 4. And so, on this day, just as the day's shift was ending, workers sat down at Chevy plant number 9. The company guards were ready to launch an attack. They began beating and gassing the sit-downers. The Women's Emergency Brigade smashed plant windows to dissipate the gas. The diversion worked. Guards left Chevy number 4 unattended. Workers then turned off all the machines and barricaded themselves in. The plant guards tried to re-enter and were met with pistons, connector rods, and fire hoses. The Women's Emergency Brigade gathered outside the plant and locked arms. UAW organizer Joe Sayan announced, quote, "We want the whole world to understand what we are fighting for. We are fighting for freedom and life and liberty. This is our great opportunity. What if we should be defeated? What if we should be killed? We have only one life. That's all we can lose, and we might as well die like heroes than like slaves." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Saturday night, if you missed it, we had our weekly Saturday night trivia night talking about infrastructure. We had our good friend John Fetterman, Lieutenant Governor here in Pennsylvania, come on and share a little thoughts about potentially a run for Senate also being thrown out of the Senate as lieutenant governor as the Republicans were trying to overthrow our government. But in talking about infrastructure, because that's what we focused on during the trivia night, just how bad our country's infrastructure has gotten. And look, this isn't news. For over a decade, we haven't had above a D overall from the society, from the Association of Civil Engineers. This is one of those moments where there could be bipartisan. If we have to be bipartisan, infrastructure is one of those places that we could get a huge, chunky, really good stimulus package out of rebuilding our infrastructure. Everything from our ports and our airports to broadband access in rural communities, to highways and bridges, to rail, to you name it, our water and sewer. Tons of stuff need to be rebuilt. We have a country where we could literally spend, and I think their number was, I think we're like $6 trillion behind. And that's just to get up to a C. That's not being the leader in the world. And, during the Bush years, I used to mock him because during the Bush years, we were 10th in broadband and internet access across the globe. We were 10th. And he said, that's 10 spots too low. I think it's funny. But, we were 10th. We're now like 23rd. So we keep falling backward and backward and backward, to the point to where, and as the latest study to come out from the American Society for Civil Engineers points out, that if we continue to do nothing, at some point we hit a gridlock state. We hit a state where our GDP starts falling, where the total economic output for the country stagnates and goes down, where it then costs us, a ton of money to just be able to get around. And look, you see it, now, when you go to major cities during rush hour, the infrastructure is just bombed. And you go, this is why you need to have public transit fully funded and accessible. This is the reason why we need to have new ways of commuting and all kinds of stuff. Broadband access so people can telecommute. If you live in a rural community, I'll tell you, if I'm in my living room in my house, I can't take a cell phone call. I got to go to my office where I have a $250 cell phone booster that I can get any signal. And you go, well, just use the Wi-Fi phone. And I should, but I shouldn't have to pay for a cell phone that doesn't work. And then I use my Wi-Fi to do it anyway. We're supposedly a first world country where this stuff should work. And we're told, well, 5G's coming. And for me, the idea that we haven't been rebuilding our infrastructure, that we went 4 years under Donald Trump, who ran on, he was going to be the infrastructure president. He was going to spend, trillions of dollars, and got nothing. We got some photo ops. My favorite photo op of him was behind the truck, looking like a little kid, driving the semi. I think that was hysterical. Now, what I would really have loved to have seen, what I've really loved to have seen is Trump taking that rig down the road, especially down I-78, where I used to have to run, and then holding on like he was, just to stay in the seat so he doesn't get bounced right out into the passenger side. Because we've done nothing to improve our road system. There are bridges you can't go over anymore because structurally deficient. There's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to jumpstart our economy, to get people back to work and get them the skills that they need to be able to participate in these good, high-wage union construction jobs. And yes, they need to be high-wage union construction jobs so that, yes, we get world-class infrastructure, but two, we have people who have money in their pockets. Remember, again, this isn't hard to figure out. When people have disposable income, they spend it. I just had someone message me, said, where I'm at, every dime that I get from the stimulus or the rescue package, I'm going to have to spend. I've got to put food on the table for my kids. I got to keep the lights on. Every dime I get will get spent. I'm not putting money away for a rainy day. I'm not paying down the road. I need it now. And every day that the Republicans hold this up and every day that the Democrats don't act aggressively is another day where these folks who need it end up struggling. Which is why I think we need quick, decisive action, and we need to get moving, and we need to do it now. Outside of this, I think we need a massive, massive infrastructure bill, because that would help those folks as well. The more people who have jobs, the better off, and we need it now. Now is a perfect time, just like it was in 2009 when we didn't really do it then. Put some money into it, but there weren't a lot of shovel-ready projects yet. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Should we be pushing for the full $2,000 like I think? Should we be pushing for $2,000 a month to get us through the summer so that maybe we kind of calm down and stay away from each other and do what needs to be done? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Today is Climate Day at the White House, and which means that today is Jobs Day at the White House.
Green News Report special coverage. President Biden launches historic government-wide climate action.
That historic action and our special coverage straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Let me be clear. We're not going to ban fracking.
Okay, Joe, you don't have to rub it in. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know you've been waiting 20 years or so for this day. A very ambitious climate change agenda from the White House.
Oh, yes. Just 1 week into his presidency, President Joe Biden made good on his campaign promise to launch a whole-of-government approach to solving man-made climate change. On Wednesday, Biden unveiled a sweeping, historic climate action plan to create millions of jobs, set the nation on the path to 100% clean electricity by 2035, and reach net zero emissions by 2050 with a central focus on environmental justice.
So no carbon emissions from power generation by 2035 and carbon neutrality by 2050, right?
Oh, yes.
And how does that stack up against other nations and their targets around the world?
It puts the U.S. in line with what other nations, especially the Europeans, have already set.
So we're catching up.
Yes. In a speech at the White House, Biden listed the costs of repeated extreme weather disasters and deadly pollution and highlighted the jobs boom that will result from addressing the critical need to upgrade the nation's crumbling infrastructure for resilience.
It's a future of enormous hope and opportunity. It's about coming to the moment to deal with this maximum threat that's now facing us, climate change, with a greater sense of urgency. In my view, we've already waited too long to deal with this climate crisis. We can't wait any longer.
The Biden climate plan is seriously huge and historic, and it is in keeping with the speed and scope that climate scientists say is necessary to avoid catastrophic climate impact. It dwarfs the policies of the Obama administration. The executive orders and actions signed by Biden focus on both domestic and international climate action and environmental justice, helping frontline and marginalized communities affected by pollution and ensuring equity in federal infrastructure and clean energy investment. It begins the phase out of fossil fuels while addressing job losses in coal mining and oil producing regions. Now, this is a partial list. Biden imposed a moratorium on new oil and gas leases and permitting for public lands and waters. Biden did not ban fracking because he can't. Only an act of Congress can do that. He directed federal agencies to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies that they have control over and to stimulate permitting and deployment of clean energy. energy. He asked Congress to finally phase out taxpayer subsidies for fossil fuels that have existed for more than a century. He boosts investment in advanced battery research and carbon capture. He directed the entire U.S. fleet of government vehicles to shift to all electric, which in turn, he says, will create 1 million auto worker jobs. He set up a White House task force to coordinate emissions reduction policies and ensure that 40% of federal climate investments go to creating jobs in marginalized communities. His order rebuilds the nation's federal science agencies and research offices. He implements measures to protect scientists and scientific integrity from the political interference that became epidemic during the Trump administration. He will establish a new modern-day climate conservation corps, modeled after the Depression-era Civilian Conservation Corps, to employ young people to build climate-resilient infrastructure. He set up a task force to create new investment in coal country and communities reliant on fossil fuel jobs to utilize the skills they already have where they live to clean up closed mines and abandoned oil and gas wells and build new clean energy projects.
And that is very important. He wants to give them jobs, new jobs, cleaning up the mess that we have made for the past I don't know how many decades.
Biden also labeled the climate crisis as a national security threat. Special international climate envoy, the former Secretary of State John Kerry, countered the corporate media's fixation on cost, noting we are already spending hundreds of billions of dollars a year on climate disasters.
So we're spending the money, folks. We're just not doing it smart. We're not doing it in the way that would actually sustain us for the long term.
Biden closed out his historic climate day with this.
Our plans are ambitious, but we are America. We're bold. We're unwavering in the pursuit of jobs and innovation, science and discovery. We can do this. We must do this, and we will do this.
We will see if we will do this. I just have a feeling the Republicans in Congress want to do none of it. For much more on all of this and the stories we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. Ohio is a welcoming place. I don't care who you are. We want you to come to Ohio. It's a progressive state. When the hell was Ohio a progressive state? Did I miss something here? Anyway, the governor and the lieutenant governor, they are putting forth a plan to get people to come and move to Ohio. They want people from the East and the West Coast to come. They're going to spend some $50 million to get folks to come. And I'm going, really? Really? With all the crazy stuff that you've been doing in your legislature, like the whole stand your ground stuff and all the gun laws and the fact that you don't have an increased minimum wage and the fact that, you still haven't moved forward on, banning discrimination and employment and housing for the LGBTQ community. Really? You're going to call yourself a progressive state? Name one progressive thing you've done. Can't. I guess, I guess they're going to try and have a marketing campaign to bring people in. We'll see how that plays out. Here to share some thoughts, former Ohio congressman and our favorite political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So your state's a progressive state now. Look, when I lived there, it was a fairly progressive state. I remember John Glenn. I remember Howard Metzenbaum with his pink ties. Loved Howard. I don't think Ohio's been a progressive state for a long time.
I don't think DeWine means progressive politically. Now, remember something, though. A lot of Republicans say that DeWine is progressive, okay?
Uh-huh.
You got to remember that. They say it every day.
Well, maybe
that
that's...
he belongs in the other party. I hear it all the time.
No, I guess your lieutenant governor chimed in and said, no, we've got small towns that are conservative. We got some of those cities that are progressive. But we've got all kinds of people here. You can come find your little segment to hole yourself up in, was kind of Husted's argument, which I find hysterical.
Well, Ohio does have a lot of different parts to it. You know the state well, and of course, I think that it's good if they had a bad campaign. They want to persuade people to come to Ohio. I think it's a great state, and I've lived here all my life. But I don't think you label, if he's labeled it politically, I don't think you want to do that. Columbus, Ohio is progressive, no question. But I don't think you want to label any state. I don't think a progressive state would want to say, come here, or a conservative state, why don't you move here, we're conservative. I just think you try to tout, some of the benefits of the state if you think it's better, living-wise or tax-wise or something like that.
Yeah,
I haven't actually read up on this.
Yeah, but the weird thing is you're going to spend $50 million on a PR campaign to say, hey, come move to Ohio. How about making things better for people who live in Ohio? Spend that $50 million so they don't leave.
Well, I don't believe in doing these campaigns anyway. I don't care what state you are. I mean, you can do tourist campaigns, I just don't think that, doing the Move Here campaign for any state really is probably worth the amount of money.
Yeah.
I think visit for tourism, if people are going to move somewhere, they're not going to move anywhere. They might travel somewhere for tourism because of an ad. You see something, but I don't think they're going to move to any state, including Ohio, because there's an ad that says, this is the place to live. I think you figure that out, or where the job is, or you happen to drive through somewhere and you like that state.
Yeah, you're not going to move to Ohio or Pennsylvania because it's freaking snowing.
I've lived here all my life. You've lived where you have lived in Ohio and Pennsylvania all your life, and then I sit here and I say, why am I not in somewhere warm?
Exactly.
It is what it is.
I grew up in Cleveland, and I remember one of the biggest wastes of money that the city of Cleveland ever came up with, and I'm sure you probably remember this. It was back in the, I guess, mid '80s. They wanted to be like New York. New York's the Big Apple. Georgia's the peach. Do you remember what Cleveland wanted to be?
No.
They wanted to be the plum.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm going.
Now, I think if you run, for example, an ad that says, "Hey, come see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame," that's really a cool thing to do, and you'll get some people. If you run an ad that says, "Move to Cleveland because of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame," I don't think you're going to win on that.
Look, I've gone a couple of times, and I think it's great.
Right.
I've gone a couple of times. That's it.
But you don't move there for it.
Yeah. No. But
yeah. So I think spending $50 million to try to get people to move, I don't think those things are worth it.
I'm kind of thinking someone's brother-in-law owns a marketing company.
Well, you never know. You never know.
I'm kind of going there. All right.
Yeah, because and plus in this type of economy we've got, spending that since the budget went haywire is it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It seems kind of stupid to me. But hey, I guess they're competing with Michigan because Michigan is doing kind of the same thing, right?
Oh, that's probably why we're doing it then.
There's a pure Michigan program that they're running.
It might be.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So one failed.
It's not football. It's come move to the state.
Yeah, I look. Are you going to pay my moving costs, find me a job, and buy me a house and buy my house? I'll happily come.
There you go.
But I don't think my wife would come though. So I'm kind of stuck. Let's move along. The big news of the day: Alan Dershowitz back in the news. Alan has nominated. I didn't know that an individual could nominate someone for the Nobel Peace Prize, but evidently he's behind the push to get Kushner and company the Nobel Peace Prize.
I didn't know an individual could nominate it.
Yeah, that's what the news story was today. And I'm going, I don't know.
Never heard of such a thing.
I don't know how Dershowitz is behind all that, but
no, I did. I mean, he has nominated Kushner, but I don't see how he, has nominated Kushner. And by the way, look, since the Arab countries, UAE, or they're doing a relationship with Israel, hey, that's great, but they did not solve the Palestinian-Israeli peace problem, period. They might make it that way. Now, if he had solved that, yes, I'd even say that he should be nominated. But yeah, they didn't solve that. Not at all.
Yeah, evidently they're,
Not at all. They did a business deal.
And that's what I thought. I'm going, I'm not getting it. What exactly did he do that we're going to do that?
Whether they're calling the peace accord the fact that the United Arab Emirates and Israel have opened up business and flights back and forth and official functions. That's what they're calling the peace accord.
Okay.
But we all know that the true peace accord, there is but one true number one peace accord that everybody's tried to solve, from Truman, FDR, Carter, etc., and that's the Palestinian-Israeli peace accord. And they built that up that way, but it was the United Arab Emirates and Israel doing a deal. A lot of it's business. Some of it's getting along. Don't get me wrong, but that is not a Nobel Peace Prize, because the UAE and Israel are now doing some deals together. That is not a peace prize, because Jordan has done recognition of Israel at some point in time. Egypt did, and that never garnished a peace prize.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And as Jen, emailed me to point out, evidently Dershowitz is able to do that because he is a professor emeritus at the Harvard Law School. And evidently he's able to do that. He's recognized through that role.
I did not know that.
Now, what I find is interesting is, as you've laid out, this was a business deal between those countries. What we didn't talk about is having anything to do with the Palestinians, which I guess for the first time in 3 years, our White House has engaged with them publicly for the first time in 3 years. And you would think if you're going to have a peace deal that they might be somewhere near it. No?
Right. Again, look, if the UAE and Israel are talking versus fighting, fine. But again, a lot of it was also not recognition only. It was a business deal. But on top of it, the peace plan, which they tried to build it up as like a pre-peace plan by doing this, bringing Arab countries into the flow. It can only be a peace plan, the peace plan with the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Trump administration cut off total communication, non-recognition of the Palestinians. Biden has, through the United Nations, just this past week, has reclaimed the ability of our country and the Palestinians to talk, just as we talk to the Israelis. So Biden did a very appropriate gesture in talking to them. Because if you're going to have an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal, it can't be Jared Kushner, the UAE, and Israel. You do have to include the Palestinians.
Or if it's going to be a successful plan, it probably should, right?
I would assume, yes. Again, great that they're talking over there, but if you want a Palestinian-Israeli peace plan, you have to have the Palestinians at the table, and that's what the Biden administration has now reversed.
So if you're
at the table,
if you're the odds maker, and what are the chances of Kush getting the prize?
I would say none for this, because again, this is nothing new. Jordan has established ties with Israel, which is great. Egypt's established them, which is great in the past. So again, they're trying to make this, for a deal with the UAE and Israel. It just doesn't rise to that level. By the way, we need to say this also to be very genuine about this. This has been going on, communication and deals between Israel and the UAE for a long time, just not officially out front publicly.
Right.
But it's an open secret.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to see. Move along. I already gave it more time than we probably should have. I just thought it was funny that Kushner and company had gotten their names even anywhere near the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, and we have to remember two things. One, that there were, for doing this deal, there was some military equipment, and also, granted by us, and also Saudi Arabia was not part of that deal, but supported us, and therefore Saudi Arabia got arms also.
Now, did Biden stop those arms to Saudi Arabia?
They have, the Biden administration has, I'm going to say, temporarily frozen the arms deal to take a look at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what are the chances of it not going through?
Oh, it's possible, because the arms deal was an executive decision by the White House, because after all, if you look back at it, even Lindsey Graham was saying, don't give the Saudis arms.
Yeah.
So what Biden has done, there's not going to be too many people complaining about that, what President Biden has done.
Yeah, interesting. I wanted to get your thoughts on this Marjorie Taylor Greene, this congresswoman from Georgia. There's talk now that evidently Steny Hoyer and Kevin McCarthy are having conversations on what to do with her. You've got Debbie Wasserman Schultz talking about a resolution to have her stripped from committees. because evidently she believes the Jews have space lasers that cause fire. Has liked and commented on putting a bullet in certain elected officials' heads. I'm curious, if you were heading up this thing, how do you deal with something like that?
Well, I think there's a few things that have to be separated here, and I think if the Democratic side doesn't separate them, they could be in problems at some point in time. And I'll make crystal clear what I'm talking about here. The fact that because this congresswoman, because Marjorie accosted the young man that was shot, at the school.
Oh yeah.
Is that bad? Yes. Is it something you strip somebody from a committee for? No. Nobody say if they start. I better watch. I got a lot of friends out there, but if they start stripping people for crazy, okay, there'll be a few missing out there tomorrow morning. All right, but like I said, just a few, because I got a lot of friends remaining out there. But in all seriousness, some of the things she did are deplorable and they're terrible, etc. But it doesn't necessarily mean you could strip her from a committee for being, goofy. Now, there's a difference, though. If she has liked something that says kill somebody, now you're talking. I mean, now that is a direct, offense, and I think that's noteworthy. So I think they need to narrow why they're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some comments that have since been deleted, I guess, that were on Facebook a couple of years ago.
But they still need to narrow it if she's proclaimed acts of violence or something, or guns or onto the floor or such a thing. They can do it. Steve King was stripped because of his white supremacist comments. They didn't want him on committees, and the Republicans stripped him. I mean, McCarthy's going to have to make a decision here. I really don't think the Democratic side wants to officially try to remove her from Congress because, if that happens, I mean, Traficant was the last one removed from Ohio. But if that happens, it takes an extraordinary vote, et cetera. So I think they're trying to pressure McCarthy to just keep her off committees because of what she's doing, unless she recants. Again, she wants to be a right-wing super nut. That's her problem. But if she does something like liking, a post to kill somebody, that's a different issue completely. Yeah, and that should be punishable.
Yeah, there's a part of me that goes, I don't really care. I was actually looking forward to her being on the Education and Labor Committee, especially the Education Committee, so that anyone could go, we need public education, and go, well, look at her, Exhibit A. This is why we need to have stronger public education. Somehow this one fell through the cracks. And, Bob, the Jews have space lasers. They set fires with space lasers.
Yeah, I don't know how she picked that one. That's bizarre.
I mean, it is bizarre, and this is what happens when you have kookery in our Congress. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with her being there, being as crazy as she can be, because it gives us the ability to talk about mental illness. It gives us the ability to talk about how our older generation has been brainwashed and all of the stuff that's happened over the years. And maybe we can heal. Maybe we can go, yeah, we all agree. She's off the beaten path.
Right. Like I said, they've got to stop, though, trying to say they don't like certain views she has.
Right.
But when she espouses violence, when she likes something that says kill somebody, then there's a leg to stand on. Yeah. But just saying, she's crazy, we don't like her views, she accosted this young man, that's just not enough to expel or, remove from a committee. Now, if you have a dangerous attitude like King did, espousing, racist white supremacy, that makes a whole different category.
No, I'm right there with you. But, since we're talking about this Marjorie Taylor Greene, you had one congresswoman, this Cori Bush, who actually had to move offices because I guess this Greene was accosting her staff.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in the hallways and things like that, which is, that's something that they can't tolerate. I mean, they've got to, do something with it. That's why McCarthy's going to have to act on it. He's the minority leader, McCarthy of California.
I don't see it happening.
Just like they did with Stephen King.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he plays this out because, I want her around. Her and gun fetish Barbie. It's good to see crazy out in front of us so we can go, this is bad. We don't want this. Please come back to somewhere near sane. Last question I got for you. There's some talk now of whether Trump should receive these intel briefings. Are you okay with Trump getting the intel briefings?
No, I mean that's the discretion of the White House, and with what's going on now, with what happened at the Capitol, with the fact that Trump is they're starting what is this? Elon Musk starting the space news or something with Trump. Based on that, I think that they have to reserve the ability to give the briefings until they've had some kind of commitment in writing or legal commitment, if President Biden wants to then let him see the information. Obviously, just to do it, nobody says Biden has to do it. This is a courtesy. It's not something that has to be done.
Okay. Yeah.
At all.
I thought it was something that it was a matter of course.
Well, it's a matter of tradition, but it's a decision of the White House, and they don't have to do it. So I think the best thing for now, since there's an impeachment coming up, since there's issues yet to be resolved on that, and the fact that he's created a news network, and what type of information would be used for that. I mean, it would be within the right of the White House to just say temporarily, or maybe indefinitely, but for right now, temporarily, they're going to freeze the information going out.
Yeah, my first
it would be within their realm to do that.
Right. My first thought was, I don't care if he gets it because he's not going to read it anyway. Take out the pictures, you don't have a problem. But then, as you point out, you've got Elon Musk in the middle of this. You've got, Steve Bannon. You've got all of these other people who most certainly would read them, and potentially using it against it. So, maybe I've gone to he shouldn't be getting it.
Yeah, and again, there's no law that says they have to get them. This is purely discretionary. So I think the wise move, especially right now during the impeachment, because if there's an anger issue and somebody starts to read this and find something that's information that could be kind of used, should I not use the word blackmail, but be used to pressure because they, know information, maybe that would be used against the government. So, right now I think it's best that the White House just suspends it and see what happens or what path they want to pursue.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, but I'm with you. Take it away from him. He doesn't need it. But, Bob, I appreciate the time. Always good stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you.
Good stuff, our good friend Bob Ney. And finally, we'll wrap up with, I think, my favorite story of the day. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw all the Trump kids come out with their flags, and we're going to save the country. Stop the steal. We're going to stop the steal. We're going to count the votes. We're going to defend President Trump because we voted for him. Our guy won. He got more votes. I love this story. Someone actually went through the people who've been arrested, and I'll be honest, my mind didn't go there. My mind didn't go to the place of, go back and see all of these people who've been arrested for, invading our Capitol because they believed that their vote was being stolen and their voices were being silenced and they had to overthrow the government because, damn it, their vote matters. I think you know where the punchline's going in this. Evidently, there are a good number of these people who they've arrested who didn't actually vote. They didn't actually vote. So they're running around screaming that, stop the steal! There are illegals who voted, but they didn't vote. That is hysterical. And I got to be honest. I'm going to, again, steal a George W. Bush quote. Uniquely American. Uniquely American. Those people, I think we should most certainly lock up. I'm sure there's a padded cell somewhere we could get to. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick